everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening for a very special webinar to get everyone ready for summer rugby camp. So really excited. This is a question that comes up quite often with students that I meet, and then obviously kind of gearing up for summer camps. I've had a lot of questions about what to expect, you know, and especially the ones that are more heavy on the recruitment side. Definitely a lot of worries, and also wondering, you know, what students can do to stand out in that process. So before I kind of jump into the agenda that I have kind of lined up, wanted to see if we can go through and just do a brief introduction. And we'll start with, we'll go James, Matt, and then Dave. And then if Josh hops on, then we'll let Josh introduce himself as well. If you guys don't mind just kind of sharing a little bit about yourself and your program, and then we'll jump on in.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Thanks for having us here. My name's James Willocks. I'm the Associate Director of Rugby here at the Naval Academy. Been a couple of different institutions. Was it formerly at Dartmouth, formerly at Penn State. Been at the Naval Academy for the last year. So programmatic-wise, recently elevated to varsity. So that's obviously been a little bit of a game changer, and the season was okay. So we'll call it that.
just okay. Pretty okay.
Yeah, it was all right. It was all right. We set the bar quite high, so I'm going to try and do it again.
Yes, congratulations to you. Coach Sherman, what about you?
Yeah, Matt Sherman, head coach, men's rugby program at West Point. Just finished my 8th year, which is wild. It's gone by pretty quick. Yeah, I hope this is my last job because I get to coach the absolute best young man in the country. As Jay's mentioned, we also have a varsity program here, and I've also coached at collegiately at Cal Berkeley, Stanford, and San Diego State. So I'm happy to help or answer any questions that relates to other schools with the other side of the country if I might know a thing or two there. So
great. And obviously James and Matt, both Naval Academy and West Point, both have their individual camps coming up this summer, which we'll make sure to share those dates. And then we'll head over to Dave.
Thanks, Karen. Dave LaFlamme, I'm the head men's coach at Brown University. I probably haven't moved around as much as these guys. I've been going on my 27th year at Brown. So been there quite a while, and certainly a bit of a different environment than these guys are in, but you know, I've worked a lot of these camps, you know, with Sherman and certainly James in the past, and you know, hopefully I can shed some light on a few things.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to kick things off, and obviously, if we want to go around in an order, if you have something specific you want to talk about, just kind of jump in. You know, I think we want to make this casual and make sure that the families that end up watching this, they get a lot of good information. And one of the questions that comes up is, you know, so let's say we've got some players that they've already signed up for one of the camps where they're going to see you. How could they prepare? Is there anything they should be thinking about in terms of athletic preparation before heading off to a camp where they're going to get seen by you or your staff? Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I can jump into that one. I have a loose background and a little bit of something physical. Yeah, that's a good question, Karen. And for guys who have just come off spring seasons, they should be okay for the most part. So the last thing we want to do is to overtrain these young high school players who are coming out. So if you just finished your spring season, you'll still probably be in good enough shape to be able to handle the volumes and intensities. Like the camps, they're demanding, but they're not here to break you. Like, we're not physically trying to break anyone or test anyone. So spring season, fine. If you finished up in the fall, make sure you accumulate a little bit of running volume. The days are quite long for most camps. Most camps I've been involved with. Usually there'll be a couple of sessions a day. So you can be on your feet for some time. So if you haven't been playing in the spring, it's usually a pretty good opportunity to make sure you get your running volume back up, just so that you avoid those soft tissue injuries and bits and pieces like that once you get into it.
I'd say the only other thing I'd add is sort of know ahead of time what the level of the camp is that you're going into. Some camps are geared more towards a high performance environment, and others are geared towards kind of skill development. So just understand what you're trying to tackle when you go to these places, so you know what the demands are going to be.
Matt, anything to add to that?
Nothing additional there, but I want to point out that in the attendees, Josh Macy is in there, so I'm not sure. I don't know if Josh is trying to, you know.
Hang on, I am promoting him. There we go. I have promoted you, Josh. You are stuck in the wrong group. Oh, here he comes. Yay! Oh, we can't hear you yet. Hang on a second. You're muted. Hang on. Let's unmute.
All right, I'm in.
Yay! Okay.
Hello, everybody. I agree with what everybody has said thus far. Great job, guys.
I mean, really, the question comes up because everyone's saying, oh my gosh, do I need to, if I'm a rising senior, right? Obviously, that's usually the most critical time they're coming in. They want to impress you. So physically though, like let's say they're coming in, they're fairly fit, they just had a season. Is there anything else, you know, they just finished, so they've got a good like month or so before they even get there. Are there any other skills that you know you're looking for at a camp that you're like, you know, maybe that's something that you could work on or get better or continue to improve until they get seen? And I'm really focusing this on those camps that are from a recruitment standpoint, that you have the power to help. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I would echo what James said before. For the most part, like you're going to be in shape enough. And what normally cooks campers during these camps is like just the amount of the day you have to be switched on, like not getting that recharge time, or you're probably staying up late in the dorms, or, you know, you're like betting to see who can eat the most ice cream at lunch, you know, and you bust a gut in the afternoon. Like those are the things that unravel you in a camp. It's not necessarily, you know, oh, I wish I would have done, you know, one more Bronco before I showed up to camp. That's not going to be it. And I think what, you know, and I'm sure we'll get there, but what ends up turning people off of campers tends to not be the physical side. I think we all understand through 4 years, especially, you know, with a coach who has a background in athlete preparation or in a high performance environment, we're not necessarily worried about the physical. You're not really going to even look the same after your freshman year, you know, on a college campus in a regular weight training program. But there's lots of other fun ways you can derail your recruitment at these camps, which I'm sure we'll get to.
Yeah. Okay. So before we get to the derailing, so before I move on to the next, is there anything else you want to think? And this was really more about the athletic preparation. So it sounds like essentially don't overdo it. If you've been having a good season, keep going with that, and maybe don't try to change things.
Guys that are physically prepared are going to stand out to us anyways in camps. We know the guys that have put the work in just by how they're performing out on the field, you know, so it, you know, that in itself, they don't, I wouldn't say they have to do anything specific to impress me, sort of what they do. And Josh sort of alluded to some of the other things that are non-physical. Those are the things that kind of really impress us, your character and things like that, you know?
And I would say from the physical side of things, I think this counts. Like, don't get new cleats before camp and get blisters in the first practice. Like, I mean, it sounds dumb, but you want to just make it through the sessions. And I think we've all been at camps before where, you know, something silly happens like that, or somebody forgets their medicine and can't train because they're not on their normal medications, or that. I think that all gets, that you can lump all that in with the physical too, right? Yeah. But there, you know, but you would see a student sitting on the sideline for the entirety of a camp for the silliest reasons you've ever seen, right? Because he has blisters or, you know, things like that. And like, just don't take that stuff for granted as well.
Okay. So we're preparing, student comes to camp, right? So like you guys have touched on it a little bit, but anything specific to help that student to stand out to you? Is there anything when they show up at the Navy camp or the West Point camp or the development camp at Dartmouth, right? Like where many of the coaches will be, what are some tips to help them stand out? And some may be like, that's pretty like you would think that's common, but you know, like we all know a lot of students don't think about those things. So what are some ideas for the students and parents that are watching, like things for them to think about that will help them stand out? They're like, this is the place I want to go. I would love to go to this program. How would they stand out to you as a coach?
I'll jump in here off the back of Josh's comment there. Effort is a great way to separate yourself. Okay, so and a lot of these camps, there's varying levels of rugby ability and physical ability. So a lot of the times we'll do something that may seem really rudimental to a lot of higher class players, but that you will see if you'll knock off. If you're too good for an activity and you're not giving effort, we see that. Okay, and like we, particularly here at the Naval Academy, is like, we just need to do the basics. We need to do the basics really, really well. So consistently give an effort. And as Josh has alluded to, it's a challenge. Like it's challenging to be focused and to be paying attention for potentially 4 or 5 hours in a day. But effort certainly does stand out.
I'd say one other thing, just prior to even that is, we all talk to a tremendous number of athletes every year. And some people we don't get to meet until we go to these camps. Don't come up to me and just say, hey, how you doing? Like, you got to be prepared, because I may not remember who you are. You make sure that you introduce yourself, tell me where you're from, and that's what's going to ring a bell. I have too many guys that come up and say, hey, coach, it's good to see you, right? Well, it's good to see you too, but I don't always remember everybody. I work with over 200 guys a year, so.
Yeah, so maybe even reaching out to you ahead of time, possibly, if it's been a while since they've communicated, and saying,
Correct.
hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you at camp, whatever, next
Yeah,
month.
I got to say, I've already had, there might be some guys on the Zoom now that have already reached out to me and said, hey, looking forward to seeing you at such and such camp, and it's good that they sort of keep that, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So it's good that they sort of put those reminders in my mind. I got 1,000 things going on. So,
and I'll rewind. Like, this is going to sound dumb. Don't talk back to your mom in the parking lot during check-in. Like that's like the most important person in the world, right? To you, or should be, as a young man. And how are you going to talk to me or my staff or somebody on my campus if you're willing to talk to your mother that way? I think Coach Sherman, I remember him telling a story about a camper asking his mom to tie his shoes, and then like being upset because it wasn't done correctly. This was like ages ago, Sherm. And like it's something that's really like stuck with me. And at the same time, how do you manage yourself personally? Like, these are, to attend a high performing, institution or a high performing rugby team, like, you need to have your stuff together a little bit. And so to arrive at camp on the Hot Mess Express, like with your stuff all over the place, and, there'd be a million problems in check-in, like that stuff matters. Like, those are impressions, and to be able to look after yourself and your person. To Navy and Army, man, like, if you can't do that, it's probably not going to work out beyond that, So I just think, like, how you operate in the building and things like that, they just end up mattering, right? And maybe you don't get a spot somewhere because you're a nice guy in the dorm or you pack your stuff well, but it's at least don't let that stuff rule you out either.
Yeah. Sherman, what do you think? Any input here?
He requested double knots in the shoelace tie.
That was it.
Send back the single knot for a double knot.
Oh my God.
I guess I think I would agree with everything I've heard. Maybe on a slightly different note, I would also just say, like, have fun. Like, rugby's fun. Camp's meant to be fun. You're there to get better. Yes, it's part of that is potentially, being recruited, but I know when I'm having fun, I do everything better. And, I think if we get too wound up about these things, that we may hurt ourselves. And have a bit of I'm going to enjoy this camp mindset. And for me, that starts with connecting and meeting other campers. We're all more comfortable when we feel like we're part of a group. And one of the blessings of rugby is this calls a great example. I've known these guys for probably decades, some of them, and we keep bumping into each other and having a good time. So connect with these guys at your camp, make new friends. You're going to bump into them. Maybe you'll be teammates one day. Maybe you'll play against them one day. And just by being part of the community at camp, you'll feel more comfortable. You'll probably play better. You'll enjoy yourself. It's a win-win-win all the way around. yeah, the second point for me would be really like a differentiator is, I don't know how to describe it. I guess it would just be being a good teammate, camps, summer camps are, there's a lot of variety there, right? So there might be a very elite player trying to get recruited and a younger guy who's, maybe not the best athlete, new to the sport, well, how do you treat that guy? Do you get frustrated with him and make him feel worse, or do you help that guy out? All these teams here are very deep teams, they're very competitive internally. We don't have enough jerseys for the amount of quality players we have in our program. So what we need is good people that'll put the team first, that'll be a good teammate all the time. And so, and that extends to, do you show up at meetings and sit at the front, or do you sit at the back? You bring some of the right stuff down with you, show how much you care. Do you help clean up after the group? You hold the door, all those things, right? Just show character, and that's, character is certainly critical, because I don't think I'd be alone, in this group saying that culture is the most important thing to our team. And for good culture, you need high character people. So yeah, we're looking for that.
Sorry, go for it.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of what Coach Sherman was saying, a lot of times we think like exhibiting character is like something we put on a resume, but it really comes down, like your mom made you go volunteer, and that shows I'm a high character individual. But in these settings, you leave all that at the door, and how you interact and like move through the camp, how you enjoy, how you connect, exactly what these coaches are saying. That is how you are a high character individual, not because you go to a good high school that makes you do community service.
I had a question come in about, and James, you touched on it earlier, but kind of like, and I know the camps are all a little bit different, or the camps that we've been to, but generally speaking, I think there are questions about, are we coming in and we're just running like Broncos and fitness and like squat, you know what I mean? Like they're wondering, what does a typical camp kind of look like? Are they playing games? Are we going like full 100%? Are we tackling? Is it just like, I've sometimes shared with some families, like what it might be like, so that they don't, again, get too wound up about certain things. So I don't know if any of you want to speak a little bit on like generally, like maybe from a kind of not layout, but just a little bit of like what to expect. So how would like a Navy camp go? Or how would an Army camp go? And then Josh and Dave, you can speak a little bit about, what the camps that you're a part of, like if they're different or if they're kind of similar.
Yeah, that's a good question, Karen. And very little, like I said earlier, like we're not set out to flog these students. So we're not going to, I don't need to see you run a Bronco. You're 15, 16, 17 years old. I got 4 years of you. And by your senior year, great, I might want to know what your Bronco time is. So for me, there's, and for the way we run our camps, there's always like a core skill component where we'll evaluate and teach and coach core skills: catch, pass, track, tackle, evade, support, and carry. And then it's game-based. I mean, I'm a big believer, even to Coach Sherman's point, like, let's make it fun. Let's make it game-based. We can learn, we can grow. And that for us, high school rugby in this country is still relatively young in certain spots. So you could, if you went strictly skill-based, you could discount some really good players. So you throw a games-based environment into them, and you can see some guys who maybe they've played lacrosse, maybe they've played football, who are really good athletes by their own right, who may not have developed the core skills yet, but us as coaches will back ourselves to develop those skills over 4 years. So my and our philosophy here at Navy, there's a little bit of skill work, but it's very, very heavy game-based. And that's small-sided games, that's bigger picture games. The contact piece, we'll do a little bit just to see competency in contact. But again, we're not trying to smash anybody up and beat anybody up.
Yeah, just to play on what James said, I think, all four of us have had those guys come into camp that maybe their skill level wasn't quite there yet, but athletically, they really demonstrated that they're a guy worth really taking a shot on down the line. I know I've certainly snagged a few of those guys that have paid off over time and really worked hard and come through. And a lot of those guys end up on my first team. So, yeah. And I apologize, but I do have to go. So okay. I know it was brief, but I got to go. We got to get the kids. Thanks, so, but certainly look forward to seeing anyone who's on the call. Look forward to seeing you guys again soon, and all the best. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Right.
Sherman or Josh, anything you want to add just about like schedule wise, what to expect?
So I know when we program, we tend to program anything that is live or heavy contact as far into the camp as possible. Like I said before, you don't want to come in day one, do a full contact drill, somebody gets hurt, and now they can't enjoy like the next 7 sessions because you maybe put them at risk a little bit too early. So any contact that comes is normally at the end, and that's for several reasons. One, contact favors early bloomers, right? And so then those students are probably favored in other sports that they play too. And so that's like James was saying, high school rugby in this country, we tend to get a lot of late bloomers, right? Because because they are late bloomers, they aren't first choice in their traditional high school sports. It's not true everywhere, but it tends to be true in a lot of places. And so focusing on the other sorts of things, the core competency of skill, games-based environment, like anybody can flourish, if they have the competencies in that scenario, where if you just turn it into a meat grinder, day one, it's like, well, yeah, the same kids who are bigger, stronger, faster, just, by genetics earlier in their life are going to stand out. And you really won't get to know any of the other students, like as far as what they bring to the table. So it's better if things like contact are left, towards the end. So again, we lessen the chance that students miss out on what should be a fun and well-rounded camp experience. And we can kind of get a look at everybody, not just the bigger, stronger, faster kids.
Matt, anything? Or I was going to just wrap that little question up with something else.
We'd be pretty similar. We only go live, but usually the last session is like a grand final day. But most of our days are kind of a progression as well. We do most of our work in the morning, more of a skills session with finishing some games. Afternoon, we have a second session, but it's very light. It's either positional skills, or we're bringing a sports psychologist, or strength and conditioning, nutrition, more of a how do you work, develop yourself as an athlete, in different ways. And then in the PM, we do a touch competition that evolves over the 4 days, eventually leading to our final full game the last day. And the other thing we do, is we bring in a lot of coaches from different programs. So we'll typically be represented by coaches and counselors from about a half dozen to a dozen other schools in the Northeast. And we rotate the group. So you'll work with a variety of coaches from different programs at our camp. One of our staff will always work with each group, but we also want to get you exposed to different ideas and different coaches and different programs. We know that particularly West Point, we're not going to be for everybody. And even everybody that wants to come to West Point, that may or may not happen. So, we want to give you exposure to different coaches as well as different coaching. We have our way of doing things, but that's just our way. It's not the best way. It's just how we feel is best for us. So that's a few things that I mentioned about our camp.
Yeah. So what I was just going to wrap, I think at various camps, the one that I am lucky enough to attend is the one that is hosted at Dartmouth. That in addition to the field trainings, there's obviously lots of optional. You can meet with the different college coaches. They have different sessions. You can meet with me. And many of those are optional. However, I think it's really helpful for a lot of students once they know when those are. It's worth it to explore those and talk to those coaches and get to know those programs. And you might be surprised that you're interested in this school that maybe you originally weren't. So I would definitely recommend those students, if there are kind of outside type meetings with a sports psychologist, nutritionist, whatever it is, to go to those. I mean, that's part of the reason you're at the camp, is you're able to, meet and learn from all these different types of people. So that would be really good. Coach Sherman, you touched on a really good point, because there was a question that came in about, let's say they wanted to go to one camp, but that camp is now sold out. Let's say a student they're not planning to go to West Point though, but going to your camp or the Navy camp or something else from a development standpoint, they would still gain a lot. Or, I mean, I have some thoughts about why they would still want to go, but is that okay with you to have players that come already knowing that they're not interested in specifically in your school?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think I would, take a gander that probably over half of our campers are in that position. We're age 10 through 18, and yeah, I would think that quite a few are there, or at least maybe don't know much about it, and are open to learning more. But that's part of the reason, again, why we intentionally bring in coaches from all around the Northeast. So each coach or counselor, some of them are counselors at college age students, we'll have an optional block throughout the 4 days that, if you're interested in these 3 schools or those 5 schools, you can go meet with them and get some exposure.
Great. At the Navy camp, are there other coaches that are going to be there, or is it strictly just like Navy staff that will be there this year?
So it'll be predominantly Navy staff, but we've actually got a little bit of help from Old Glory this year. So we've got some MLR guys coming over to help. So that'll be exciting for them for our campus to be exposed to some professionals. So it'll be cool.
Great. Let's see, I have a question here. Okay, I'm going to come back to that question. Okay, I want to just touch on one thing before we get to some more questions that Coach Macy already kind of touched on, and maybe you just have some specifics, but pitfalls to avoid while at camp. So the students that are watching this, how can they learn from previous attendees who have made some of those mistakes? So maybe not asking mom to tie their shoes in a better way. But is there anything else that you want to make sure they think about before they come to camp? Ways to avoid standing out, but in a negative way. So obviously you guys had some character issues. How do you treat other teammates? Anything else that we may not have touched on in terms of pitfalls, things to avoid?
So I would say anything, a lot of times you may be staying in dorms. There might be other camps going on, like a myriad of other camps going on. Yeah, I say anything you do that you shouldn't after hours. I mean, you'll likely need to be picked up by your parents and you'll be immediately disqualified, not just from that campus, but I mean, you can probably see from this call, like how we all kind of know each other a little bit. I think that would have some pretty serious ramifications for your, rugby aspirations in college.
Okay. Anything, James, Matt?
No, Josh is the expert here. No new boots, and yeah. Well done, Josh.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think about, a lot of what you guys talked about with the time management, the organization, but I mean, maybe not, just knowing that like you're there for a reason, especially if it's a recruitment piece, right? So it's a little bit, yes, have fun, but a little bit of it is a little bit like an interview. So, I mean, you do want to make sure that you're presenting yourself in a good way, right? I've seen it where some players are a certain way when the coaches are around, and then when they're not, they're completely different. And some of the counselors are current players, and maybe the high school players feel more, they're around their peers and they can say things that maybe they shouldn't. So just be aware, right? Like the things that you wouldn't want your grandma to hear you say or talk about, we kind of hear those things too. And those are all kind of back to that character piece of not wanting to do anything that might risk your chances of recruitment, right? So just being aware, and social media, on your phones, all that kind of stuff, just kind of being careful about what you're doing. Obviously at camp, but obviously even after camp as well. All right, let me address some of these questions here. So basically when you come to camp, like be a good person, right? Like don't do anything that really, as much as you want to sneak out of your dorm and go do anything, like that's just going to put everything at risk here for you. So it says, what does a 15 or 16-year-old from the UK need to consider? Is a summer camp a good idea? This is actually so this person, I might need to speak with you individually because there's a lot of questions here about like GPA and things like that. But I think it's a good question about international players attending your camps, anything that they should be aware of, anything that you might want to address for that?
Yeah, I mean, we'd welcome any international. So obviously there's certain requirements to apply for the Naval Academy in West Point. We'd welcome any internationals. Obviously, the Dartmouth camp we ran used to have a lot of internationals come over, some good experience there. And like as much of this as Coach Sherman's already alluded to, like as much of this is us getting to look at these students. Conversely, it's the students getting to look at the institutions and figure out, like, is this a place that I can actually spend the next 4 years? So if you're an international, and okay, you're probably not looking at the Naval Academy. You could be looking at Lindenwood. You could be looking at Dartmouth. You could be looking at Brown. Go there, experience those things, get a feel for what it's like. You're potentially making a 4-year commitment, and you want to make sure that you can spend those 4 years wherever that institution is, and as long as that institution aligns with the experience you're looking for. So I would encourage as many internationals to get over and have a look, because I mean, I'm speaking as a former foreigner. It's an amazing place. It's an amazing country with amazing opportunities. So yes, I'd jump at as many as I could.
Yeah, the idea of the summer camp is good too, if it gets you to experience what dorm life is like, what does it feel like to eat in the residence halls, and what is the surrounding town. I mean, I've had some students that obviously the one hosted at Dartmouth, which is kind of this cute little town. They're coming from these big metropolitan cities, and it's quite a shock for them, right? To see culturally, like, what it's like to fly into that airport and travel to a campus. So I think for this parent who's asking whether or not they should send a student to camp, I think it's a really good experience for them to see, do they want to come over here, whether it's that specific college or not, but even just like managing. I have a lot of students say, look, if you're going to come to the camp, I want you to try to organize your flight, your transportation, to do all those sorts of things, because that's what you would eventually have to do, is to get home for the holidays or things like that. So that might be really helpful there. Come back here. Any specific, you mentioned your camps, at least for West Point, it's 10 to 18. Is the Naval Academy one also 10, or is it mostly just high school?
Just double checking the website, Mike. I make sure I don't speak wrong. It's 10 to 18 as well. We are also
okay,
10
great.
to 18.
So are the younger students normally separated from the older? I think there's some worry about, like, if they've got a 10-year-old, you know what I mean? Like, I think
Yes.
They're obviously not going to be tackling 18-year-olds, but are they just separated by their age?
Yeah. So in the rugby specific wise, yes, we actually try and integrate as much as possible as we can the young guys with the older guys, because to some of Josh's points before, to see how some of the older guys interact with the younger guys is really important as well. Obviously, even a rugby capacity, we've got to be really careful around that. What we tend to do is split up rising juniors, rising seniors. And then there's this interesting, like, limbo bubble. Like, there's a 15-year-old that could look like he's 20, or there's a 15-year-old that could look like he's 10. So that's where we'll look at and we'll assess. And maybe if they're in a position that we do feel that they can compete physically, we might bump them up. But yes, rugby-wise, we do try and split them up just to look out for them.
Okay, wonderful, good. So no worries there for the parents that are concerned about that. I know I have some parents on here too that are interested in girls' camps. Obviously, I don't have any women's team coaches on here. There are a few camps that are happening this summer, but not as many as for the boys. Princeton and Bowdoin are the only two that are programs that technically recruit. I know Life and Lindenwood sometimes have them, and I know there was a question whether or not Lindenwood was going to have it. I haven't seen the dates yet. I mean, I think certainly if there's a school you're very interested in, I would get in touch with those coaches and make sure they know that you're interested if they do have a camp coming up, for them to notify you as soon as possible. So obviously on my website, I have a summer camps page. I try to keep that updated as soon as things are updated. So definitely keep an eye on that. And certainly if you're able to, go to a couple camps in the summer, if your budget allows, if your schedule allows, I think it's great to get a chance to meet multiple coaches, and see, like, do you get along with this coach? Do you like the way Coach Macy coaches? Do you like the way that Coach Sherman coaches? Does it fit kind of your vibe of, like, what you're looking to do in the future? I mean, I've had some students that say, hey, like, I was surprised how much I maybe either didn't like that style or really did like that style. And that kind of did push them towards, that's the person who's going to help coach you, for 4 years when you are in college. Okay, Okay, we're kind of down to the last, I was trying to keep this to about 45 minutes. So any final thoughts or anything, especially the concern is always, oh, actually, sorry, I had one more question. I'm looking at my emails here. Okay, so for a student that's coming to a school like the Three Doors that can actually help with recruitment, when would they know? Do you tell them at camp? Do you tell them after? Like, what are some expectations for them in terms of that recruitment process? Is there anything they need to do after? Like, tell me a little bit about what that might look like for a player you really like. You've been in contact with hopefully beforehand. They come to the camp, they show well, they're awesome leaders and characters and those sorts of things. So what might they expect from you after they see you maybe this summer?
So until an application is in and it's being reviewed, and every university has their process. I know for me as a coach in recruiting, like, it's important that I don't speak out of turn, because, like I said, when applications are in, who knows what happens in that building? There's been students I thought were no-brainers that struggled to get in, and vice versa. So really, what students would expect from me is a statement of, like, my intent. I would like to help you and your family, make this an educational opportunity for you for the next 4 years, right? Well, then it's admissions, and it's financial aid, then it's all these other processes, and I think for rising seniors, they would be well into that process for Army and Navy, but for me, my big thing is, like, don't speak out of turn as a head coach. Like, be honest with the student, let them know that you like them, you want to work with them, and that you'll see them through the application process as best you can. And then ultimately, once that's all decided, it's up to the student and their family what decision they choose.
Okay, so then if they apply, they would just want to make sure to let you know, hey, coach, I loved having that conversation with you at camp. I've applied, here's my application number. And then from there, you two would continue down that process. Perfect.
Correct. And if there's certain parts, if I get to know that student a little bit, and there's certain parts of their application that maybe they need to balance out, or have some supplementary materials available quickly, I can kind of get ahead of that and help that student tailor their application better for our university in particular.
Okay, perfect. Sherman, what about you? Anything you can share about what that process might look like if they come to your camp and that's where they want to go?
Well, yeah, some come who have been in touch with us prior to coming, and some come to the camp and are interested, but we don't know it, or they become interested there. And yeah, I would just say communication, being a better communicator is never going to hurt you. So, following up after the camp to say, this reinforced my desire to come here, especially when something you really want. I would be very clear about that. And I'd also say it's quite all right to be clear that it might not be something you want, or you're exploring other things. We're not naive to the fact that there's lots of great options out there, all of us coaches. So I think just open, honest, and continual communication reveals a high character, which is, again, something we're after, whether it's someone that's going to come play for us or not. So yeah,
generally, and I know I'm pushing, and maybe you don't have an answer, but like, I think I always get the questions, like, timeline wise, right? Like when in a perfect world, when would they know that you are planning to support their application, their process? You know what I mean? Like, is it October, November, December? I mean, like, when would they expect that, or could they expect that?
It's a moving target because it really involves a lot of different parts. So I would be hesitant to be too specific about that, and set expectations. So yeah, I would. Okay. I don't think it's in anyone's benefit to probably answer that question.
Okay.
Answer.
Yeah, and I'll also mention, I'm pushing sure, but for those of you who are interested in West Point, if you're already in touch with Coach Sherman, you know that there's a lot of extra pieces to the application process for a West Point and Naval Academy, any of the service academies, including nominations and all, medical and all this other stuff that are different from other colleges. But I mean, this is certainly a question that I would, if you really want to go, that would be a question you might want to ask or find out, or how far along are there things that are missing from their profile that they might need in order to, to find out. James, anything, or are you kind of on the same page as Coach Sherman?
Yeah, no, I'm on the same page as Coach Sherman, and we're very new to this. Our first year as varsity, we're very new to this model. And I mean, the big takeaway for us is that if the Naval Academy is a place you really want to be, the sooner that you get your application complete, and as you've already alluded to, there's a lot of things in that, the better. Like the better for us, because once, to Coach Macy's original point, it's like, well, we can't really do anything until that application is complete. So if you know that that institution is really where you want to be, get that complete. And to echo Coach Sherman's sentiment, which is bang on, communicate. Just get in touch with us, get in touch with the coaches, keep talking to them, let us know where you're at, because it is a moving target, certainly a moving target.
Perfect. I'm going to kind of wrap things up here. I will say everyone who was on the call and everyone who registered, and also on the recording, we're going to send out all the coaches' contact information. So feel free to reach out to them if you have specific questions. Make sure you sign up for their camps if you haven't already. Are there still spots at your camp? I think the Rising Senior Camp, the one that's hosted at Dartmouth, I think that's actually sold out, but the younger students, there's still openings. Naval Academy in West Point, do you still have openings at your camp?
Yes, ma'am. I think we have a few more. We have a few more open, so we're getting close to full.
Great, and I believe there is a girls camp and a boys camp at both. So for the female players, if you're interested, those two are there as well. I want to thank all of you so much for your time. I know you've got so much going on. It's lovely to see you, and I hope I get to see you again this summer. And if any of you have any extra questions you have, again, obviously feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help. And then I hope everyone has a wonderful summer of rugby.